Over the years, I was able to witness how Japanese knotweed is able to take over an entire river corridor because it happened right in my backyard, pretty much. And when I came up here to start working for APIP, I realized that the knotweed infestations that we still have are very small, and we have a lot of river miles here to protect. So these infestations that are just starting on these rivers are really important to address, because if we don't, we could lose a lot of these very scenic and economically important river corridors that are here in the park.
Japanese knotweed is a large herbaceous shrub that grows in very tall and dense stands, and there are a few key characteristics you can use to identify it. The first is that it has a pretty large and hollow stem that resembles bamboo, although it is not a true bamboo plant. And approximately every 4 to 6 inches along the length of the stem, there's a raised ridge that's referred to as a node, and this is also where the branches or leaves attach to the main stem. The leaves of Japanese knotweed are heart-shaped. Typically they're pretty flat at the base, and they come to a pretty fine point, and they can range in size depending on the size of the plant, but they're typically at least 6 inches across and can be much longer than that as well. And this plant flowers towards the end of summer. Many times we see Japanese knotweed infestations spread along the roadway, and they'll be spread by road maintenance activities, mowing, and movement of contaminated fill until they reach a stream that crosses under the road, and at this point they're able to be transported downstream by more natural factors like high water events that break apart the rhizomes and break apart the canes and transport that material farther downstream.
I've worked with the department for 17 years, and I've seen invasive plants have a negative impact on our infrastructure with block signage, clogging up our drainage. There are simple things we can do to limit the spread of invasive plants. Use clean fill when available, mow around infestations, use native plants in our landscaping, and limit the disturbance during and after construction projects.
So I'm just digging up these small plants, making sure I get all the roots and rhizome material. So if any of these nodes were to fall into the dirt, into some disturbed ground, it can produce those rootlets. Each one of those nodes can take hold and put up a new plant. So if you look at how many nodes we have on just this small branch, you can kind of start to imagine how many Japanese knotweed plants were produced if one of these large infestations were to be broken apart by, say, mowing or a high water event along a river. So now that we've made sure there aren't any more rhizome fragments in the wall where we've removed this root ball, we're just going to fill it back in with the dirt, kind of tamp it down a little bit just to reduce the disturbance at the site, to make sure that no new invasives gain a foothold here. So now that we've filled in our hole and bagged up all of our plant material, we're going to take this bag of plant material, make sure it's tied up nice and tight and that there aren't any holes in it, and then we're going to place that in the sun for approximately 2 weeks. And what that's going to do is the sunlight will heat up the bag, and all that plant material inside will turn into kind of a liquid, and it'll then be non-viable and it won't be able to grow anymore.
So the main way we treat or manage Japanese knotweed when it's too large to dig up is through a process called stem injection. So the way the stem injection process works is we use a stem injection gun with a short hardened needle, and we inject a select amount of herbicide down near the base of each one of the canes. We also have these marking pens on our stem injection gun that mark each one of the canes as we're injecting them, so that we can keep track of where we've been and we don't overtreat the site. So once we've been able to stem inject all the canes that are large enough to, we have to go back and conduct a foliar spray of the ones that are just too small to inject. So we just go back in with a backpack sprayer or a pump sprayer, selectively treat each one of those small plants. And it's really important to remember that if it's growing in an aquatic setting along a river or something, you really need to be a certified pesticide applicator to conduct those applications. If it's growing on your own property in an upland setting, you can do treatments on your own, but it's always good to contact a professional and get their guidance.
I used to have a backyard. I did at one time. Yeah, I had it all cleared off. I had a nice lawn back in here. And I kept it down for the longest time. This year I said, no more. I'm gonna see how bad it gets. And it got bad.
I bought this property in 2012, and there was Japanese knotweed from behind me, across, and then patches going down to the bridge. Many people before I had purchased the property had looked at the property, and one of the deterrents was the Japanese knotweed. My vision for this property is to have fruit trees and vegetables and flowers growing, goats and possibly chickens. One of my concerns, given the proximity of the Japanese knotweed to the house, is that it can grow into the cracks and crevices of the foundation and start to break up the actual structural integrity of the house. So I called over and just to get an assessment of what could be done. The APIP came right on over and took measurements of the infestation. We spent some time talking about treatment options. Their recommendation was to do injections and to target the roots. With Japanese knotweed, it's really important to kill the root systems, because if you just take the individual stalks off, it will continue to grow from the roots. I was quite amazed at the volume and the diversity of plants that came back after the treatment in year 2.
It looks great.
Yeah.
I think it's ready for goats.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm ready.
Yeah.
So it's been just about 1 year since we treated this Japanese knotweed patch. You can see there are a few dead canes left over, as well as some small resprouts that are coming back. So the next step in the management process will be to use our glyphosate foliar spray to address those small plants, and then continue monitoring the site for several years to make sure we don't get any new regrowth. The goal of our invasive species management work is not just to get rid of the bad plants, but also to promote the recovery and establishment of more desirable native species. And you can see at this site that we treated, we already have things like sensitive fern and Solomon seal moving back into the site. And over time, we would expect that this site would look very similar to the surrounding landscape that was not invaded.